Do people want to hear rants though? Can we not have? I was going to have more of a philosophical, political discussion, or do you think people would rather hear your ranting than that?
I think both. I think there's room for everything.
There's room for everything.
There's room for nuance, and there's room for like unbridled passion.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. This is a podcast where two exes who are still good friends get to shoot the shit, talk about whatever is on their mind. I know you hate that expression, Sean. Talk about whatever is on their mind that week. Shoot the breeze. Is that better?
Yeah.
Shoot the breeze. Put the world to rights. My name's Josh. I'm one of the hosts. And the other one is Sean. How are you, Sean?
And the other one. Hello,
The other one.
I'm the other one.
You're the
I'm
other.
doing all right. What do you think the etymology of the term "shoot the breeze"?
Shoot the breeze. Who knows? Who knows? And who really cares?
Well, I do. I find that interesting. I wonder where it comes from. Can I before we
do some
start?
live research.
Before we start, can I show you something? Do you know I'm moving to Australia in 8 months' time or something?
I do know that. Yeah.
And I'm trying not to collect any more things.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw something the other day that I had to buy, and now I'm going to have to carry it in hand luggage to Australia.
What is it?
Okay.
You'll have to do an audio description for the
What am I
podcast
obsessed with?
listeners. Oh, well, Labubu? I don't know.
No, I'm not in. I'm aware of Labubu. I'm not obsessed with Labubu.
Gaga?
Yes, I am obsessed with
The
Gaga.
new Gaga album?
I love Mayhem by Lady Gaga. Oh, which, talking of, she's about to drop a new song.
Is this from the Friday?
Wednesday, even.
A Wednesday, even. Yeah, that one. Thursday.
Friday,
Saturday.
aka La Fufu. Friday is the Wednesday La Fufu.
Wednesday. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's not Gaga related, but I am very excited about that new song coming out. I'm very interested in vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And in a shop the other day, I saw the best thing that I've ever seen. Now, I'm going to hold it up. And for Josh is shaking his head. For anybody that is listening and they can't see the visuals, this is like cheap ceramic bust of a vampire Dracula head. Very, very hideous style. I love it so much.
Is it a mask or is it a... No, not really.
Fully round. And if I take the lid off, inside is a large soy wax candle. And it smells like a cheap, it smells like toilet freshener.
No,
and
yeah.
it is the best thing that I've ever had.
Like summer meadow with a hint of shit.
Yeah, or like cotton sheets or something.
Cotton sheets with a hint of fecal matter.
How amazing is that?
Well, I'll reserve judgment for the listeners and viewers.
What's the safety on an airplane business? Do you think I'm allowed to take a candle on a plane that has still got the wax in it and the wick in it?
I don't know. I mean, on the plane, I think it's fine, but getting it through security, they may want to like dissect it, cut it in half, make sure you haven't hidden a blade inside the wax.
But how good is that? Well, they could X-ray it, couldn't they?
I suppose, yeah. I suppose.
So that when I saw that, I screamed and I ran. It was the last one left on the shelf in TK Maxx.
So after all your talk a few weeks ago about the MJ reducing your compulsive buying habits,
but this wasn't compulsive. There's only one of these, so I don't have lots of them. And it might be the only vampire candle that I ever buy in my life.
Okay.
But do you know when I go to Australia? Sorry, I'll stop sniffing the inside of my Dracula's head. But do you know when I travel to Australia, I've booked my flights for Australia because this is the thing, right? Everything you have to book a million miles ahead. In modern life, if you want a train ticket to Sheffield, you've got to buy it 3 months in advance. If you want a plane ticket to
only
Australia,
in the UK. In the UK, well, trains in the UK, yes, you have to book them so far in advance. I feel like in other countries, the train networks are much better in the sense that you can just go and buy a train ticket from like Barcelona to Madrid, and it will be a very similar price to, what it would be if you'd booked a
Yes.
month ago.
Yeah.
Um,
But with international flights, you usually have to book
yeah,
quite a long way
yeah,
in advance. So
yeah.
we've booked, but I've done one of these deals where I'm like using frequent flyer miles. I'm using a companion voucher from using the credit card. I'm getting a discount. So we're flying via Tokyo, and we're going to
Mm.
spend 5 nights in Tokyo,
Oh wow,
and
fun.
then there's like a cheap airline called Jetstar that's
Mm.
from Australia, and then we're going to take the Jetstar plane from Tokyo to Brisbane.
Cool.
I think that's nice for splitting up that journey because it's such a long journey.
Mm.
But part of my excitement was I don't know if I'll actually go there because it's not a vegan restaurant, but there is a vampire themed restaurant in Tokyo that I've discovered. And the servers all dress up as Dracula.
Mhm.
And it's all dark curtains and red velvet curtains. And they're like, you get inside little booths and there are little coffins to go in, and it looks so camp and so fun. But I can't really judge if there's any vegan stuff on the menu, so I could go just for a drink, just to have the
Mhm.
experience of being at the vampire restaurant. Anyway,
Mhm.
that's
Wow.
and so it was a sign that because I knew about this vampire cafe and then I saw this candle, it was a cosmic sign from
It's
Dracula himself.
it's surprising there aren't more vampire themed, restaurants, bars, pubs,
Well,
whatever.
any sorts of attraction. Like my
Yeah.
dream, I think I've mentioned on here before, is to open a vampire themed cinema where I only
Mm.
show films to do with connected to vampires. I think that'd be really fun. Obviously, it wouldn't be a bit like a big cinema, multiplex cinema. It would be like a little art house back room thing where I would show,
Mm.
old movies from the 50s
Yeah.
and
It's not
different.
gonna it's not gonna be turning a profit, is it?
No, it would be like
Be a
a
passion project.
yeah, vanity project.
Mm.
But I would love to host it, and I would love to go dressed as Dracula or a vampire
Yeah.
and walk out and
So
introduce the films.
I think Sean and I have been on sort of tenterhooks, which is another interesting thing we should look into the etymology of. Just because about 2 days ago, earlier this week, we were trying to record this episode, and every time we got to a sort of a certain point, it would stop recording.
Yeah.
And so after like four or five attempts, we just gave up. We were like, "This is ridiculous," and it turned out to be a technical issue with the podcast recording software that we use. Something with their servers. It wasn't on our end.
So we're
But
back
so we're
again.
back, and I'm looking at the little timer in the corner just to make sure it's still recording because I'm still got trauma PTSD from
Well,
trying to record earlier in the week.
one of the things that I had prepared for that episode, which now feels like 100 years ago, I
Mm.
was asking you why some of the boroughs in London
A
are
royal,
called
that's right.
royal boroughs, and we worked out
Mm.
it's because they have some association with royalty, either whether it be a residence or a building. And so there are three royal boroughs, and that's
Mm.
Greenwich, Kensington and Chelsea, and Kingston upon Thames. But how
Mm.
many boroughs are there in London, do you think?
I don't know, probably 30 or something.
Yeah, there is 32 plus there's the City of London.
Oh, right, yeah.
And did you know that the City of London is actually a functioning place, but it's also a ceremonial borough?
Hmm.
Do you know, apart from the City of London, which other borough is the only one to have designated city status of its own?
Westminster.
Yeah. We won't do
Do I
this.
win a prize?
No, I don't even know why that's impressive to me. But do you know, I won't go through this, but you know these
Mm.
games people play where they try and name all of the US states, or they try and
Oh,
name,
like on Sporkle or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be able to name all of the London boroughs, all 32
No,
of them?
no.
How many,
Uh,
if like, maybe it'll be another episode, but how many do you think you would be able to do?
oh, like maybe, probably only about 10. Because
Really?
yeah, I don't know,
Oh,
maybe more, but I don't, there are some parts of London that are just a mystery to me, places I've never been, probably will never go.
like
It's
there
so
are a
big.
lot. Yeah, there are a lot that when I look, I put this list down just to have it at hand. And there are some that, even though I might have heard of them, I would never be able to recall, even if you
Yeah.
gave me the first letter.
Yeah.
Like if I said like boroughs starting with the letter H,
Yeah.
what would you know?
Haringey, Hounslow, Harrow. I'm sure.
Hackney,
Oh yeah, Hackney.
Hammersmith and Fulham,
Yep. Yeah.
and Hillingdon.
hmm
Don't know what that is, and Havering.
Havering, I've never heard of.
I mean, I'm even assuming it's pronounced Havering.
Havering,
Havering.
Havering.
But anyway, so there's one called Merton.
hmm
There's one called
All right, we don't need the whole
something.
list, Sue.
But, like it's to me, it's like I think I'd be able to name all states in the US before I would be able to name half of these
Oh
boroughs of the
yeah,
city
for
I live in.
sure, for sure. Pub quiz trivia, FYI. We won the pub quiz the other night. I went
Oh,
with
yeah.
some people from work. There's only one US state that you can type using just one line of your standard QWERTY keyboard. Do you want to see if you can guess which one that is? Or
Okay.
maybe not do it live, but maybe by the end of the
Well,
episode,
it
see if you
won't
can
it won't
figure it
be the
out.
bottom one because there are no
No,
vowels
there
on
are
the
no
bottom
vowels. That's
one.
true. Very true.
So it has to be either the top or the middle,
hmm
and
Anyway, but have a
uh,
think about it. We don't need to do a live quiz, but
what does
just
it start with?
well, I'm not going to tell you that.
Yeah,
But
but I'm not gonna sit here the whole hour going, like,
well,
looking at
we'll come back to it then. We'll come back to it. But just on the pub quiz, I won, and it's so embarrassing I won it. But in between rounds, they do quick fire rounds
uh-huh.
where, they'll just say in the next 20 seconds, bring up a piece of paper with your name and the answer to this question, and the closest guess wins a free drink. So the question was in Donald Trump's MAGA store in New York City, how much does he sell his red "Make America Great Again" caps for?
Mhm.
And I put $54.99 in US dollars.
I would have said $59.
Okay, well I said $54.99, and the answer was 55, and so
Wow.
I won a free glass of wine, um,
Do you
and
think that
it's all
people
thanks
thought
to Donald Trump.
do you think people thought you knew that because you bought one in the
Well,
past?
I felt like people might, and so to justify it, I went through my reasoning behind that. And do you remember? I don't know how many years ago, maybe 2 years ago now. I was in Palm Springs, Palm Desert, with some friends from Australia, and we hadn't planned it, but I noticed that we drove past the Trixie Motel. So
Mhm.
Trixie Motel is a drag queen, celebrity entrepreneur, and she or he, depending on whether they're in drag or not, I suppose, opened a motel in Palm Springs. I can't remember which. Maybe Palm Desert, and anyway, it was we drove past it, and I said, "Oh, let's go and have a look. You can go in, even if you're not staying there. You can go in and have a look around." And do you remember? I think I sent you a picture in the gift shop. They were selling Trixie Motel caps for
Yeah,
$54.99, and I was just like, "What kind of extortion is this?" Like that cap would cost maybe at most it would cost maybe $5 to buy
yeah,
wholesale and have it customized. Like it would
yeah,
not cost anything more than $5
yeah.
wholesale to have that custom made, and they're selling them for $54.99. I was like, this just daylight robbery. I can't see any justification for charging that amount of money for
That's
something. I
wild.
mean, the markup is in the hundreds and hundreds of percent. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's
so
wild.
that was what informed my guess at the pub quiz. So I felt like I had to. Do you know what I mean? I felt like with the Trump, and I realize I've now said his name twice, but with the dump connection, I had to justify how I knew it would be around that price mark.
Yeah. I I find merchandise like that to be always overpriced
Mm-hmm.
and always redundant as soon as you get it. You buy it and it's such a waste.
Mm-hmm.
But talking about, things that are rip-offs, you know how this whole drama with Manjaro pricing,
Mm. Oh yeah. Mhm.
Oh my, you've seen how much the price is going up.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you paid 180, it's now going to be like nearly 400. Like it's a lot of money.
It's pretty much doubled. At the higher doses, it's doubled.
I went to my local pharmacy today, which is
Mhm.
just an independent pharmacy where I go. It's my regular pharmacy. And I just said to them, "Hey, do you happen to have any of the pens left before the price goes up?"
Mhm.
Like, and they said, "Yes, we have one, and we would sell it to you at the old price before the price goes up of £195, which in itself is scandalous,
Well,
right?"
yeah.
And they said, "But because you've never bought from us before, we would have to charge you a consultation fee of
Mm.
£95." And I was just like, "Is that a legal requirement?" And they said, "No, that's just our policy." I said, thank you, but no." Like,
Mm.
and this is my pharmacy where I get all of my prescriptions from. They've
Yeah.
seen me with my weight loss and my health improving and everything since I've lived here. They
Mm.
always comment on it. And I had a whole conversation with them today while I was waiting to speak to the pharmacist. They wanted to charge me £95 just to sell me a drug for £200.
Mhm.
This feels like we're going into USA territory of healthcare
Mhm.
head first.
Yeah, I think you've got two things what's the word? Two things intersecting there, and one is healthcare and the state of healthcare and the influence of pharmaceutical companies. But then the other thing, of course, is just an independent business in London is fucking tough.
Mm.
You know, you talk to anyone, you talk to our friends, James and Ange, you talk to anyone who runs an independent business, especially one with a
Yep.
bricks and mortar location. And if you want to pay your staff, a living wage, um, it's almost impossible to turn a
Yeah.
profit. You know, it is, and so yeah, it's outrageous, but it's not surprising at all to me that independent pharmacies won't have the buying power that big companies like Boots or Superdrug have.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they'll have to get that money out of their patients or out of the process somehow, and that is always passed on to the patient. You know, it's disgusting that that's the way it is.
But also that medicine that they had today, they acquired that at the old price.
Yeah.
So this way of asking me for this fee, consultation fee, was their way of getting closer to the new price without having to charge me the new price.
Mm. Hmm.
I find it outrageous.
I mean, the funny thing is, I suppose, that even with that consultation fee, it would still be cheaper than what it's going to be
Oh,
from
yeah.
your normal supplier under the new pricing structure. So,
But I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to afford the new pricing structure.
mm,
So I'm going to have to stop taking this medicine at some point, whether that's now or in a month
yeah,
when
yeah,
that pen runs out. So I was just like, no, thanks.
mm,
I suppose I'm going cold turkey on the Manjaro.
hmm,
But yeah, you're right. London is brutal, like every part of it. But people, not us, but people generally earn more money than they do in the rest of the country. So London
yeah.
wages are higher
Well,
than the
no, I
rest of the
think
country.
I think you and I don't have, neither of us have especially high paying professional jobs. But I think we probably are still earning a bit more perhaps than people in other parts of the country.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is that this price rise for these drugs is UK wide.
Hmm.
And so somebody who is disadvantaged already in another part of the country for, not as much work or lack of infrastructure or lack of access or whatever it is, they're expected to pay the same amount of money as people living in London who have much more access and support and probably higher paid jobs.
Yes, yeah, I see what you're saying. However, I've said this to you before, and I've got absolutely no evidence to support this, or I know that there is huge inequality in the UK,
Yeah.
and I don't just mean financial. I mean in terms of access to healthcare and stuff. And I know that for example, in the Glasgow area, there's a lot of studies that show, a lot of statistics that show that, that's got some of the highest incidences of heart disease. And so I know that there are disadvantages, but I also know sort of anecdotally from my own experience that friends who live outside of London who have sort of semi-professional jobs, like maybe white collar jobs, I suppose is the term,
Mhm.
um, do seem to have a lot more disposable income because London is so expensive. So
Yeah.
in London, I just read a thing the other day and it was saying, I can't remember what percentage of the average monthly income has to go towards either rent or mortgage repayments if you live in London. And it's much higher than anywhere else in the country. And so
Yeah. I
I've
mean,
got
there are
friends.
people paying 2/3 of their income on
Yeah,
rent.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, travel, we have the second most expensive travel public transport system in the entire world in London. And so then, as well as paying extortionate rent, you're also paying extortionate travel costs. And yes, the wages are a little bit higher in London normally, but
Yeah.
not, it doesn't fully reflect or compensate for the increase in expenses that we have to pay. So yeah, I see what you're saying about the price rise of Manjaro is going to affect people differently, but I actually think people outside of London sometimes have more disposable income because life in London is fucking brutal. It's a real
But
grind.
no matter where you live or what money you've got, if you're a working class person, a
Mm,
drug going from 200 to 400 pounds is not sustainable. I mean, it's not. And also, often the people who are
but
using this drug are vulnerable in other ways as well.
Yeah,
So
but I
you're,
think I think we need to check our privilege a bit because I think if people, working class people wouldn't have been able to afford this drug in the first place. There are people
well,
who are, who at the
that's
end of the
right.
month have maybe, £50
Yeah.
to spend on other things, and this drug is currently £180 or
Well,
around that.
I was talking to Hill before and I said, I feel very fortunate that I have been able to have this intervention for as long as I can, when
Hmm.
there were so many hundreds of thousands of people or more who haven't been able to afford the drug at all. So I've
Mm.
had at least the life-saving intervention for what I have. But um, yeah, it's just a wind up because there's so many things going on in London that are like pushing me to my limit. Like I had British Gas on the phone for an hour again today. They like saying that I owed them money, and then when they apologized and realized it was their mistake, they said we'll offer you £30 um, compensation. And I said, well, that doesn't seem very fair. And he said, well, we'll give you 50 then. And I was like, what are these arbitrary numbers that you're pulling out of your ass, mate? Like,
Yeah,
what do you? And then anyway, this whole other thing. But with London, it's obviously getting more expensive to live here as the population grows, like most big cities. But did you know that the population of London was at its pinnacle in 1939? And then when the war happened, and obviously a lot of people moved away or got killed, the population declined a lot. And the
mm.
population didn't reach 1939 levels again until 2015.
Really?
Yeah. Like it took until 2015 to reach the same population that it was in 1939. And that they call it like counter urbanization, where people were moving away from London. And that didn't stop or reverse until the 1980s. And that's when it like instead of the trend going down, it started going back
Mm,
up again. And then it took to 2015 to reach. And now, obviously, now since 2015, it's past that.
hmm.
But isn't that wild? That was the most surprising fact to me about London. But
Yeah.
it's like Mexico City. It's like when the urbanization goes the other way, where it just is like on an upward, incline,
Mm,
it just pushes so many people out, and it makes it so difficult for people to live in a big city anymore, and it makes the
yeah.
poor people poorer
Yeah.
and the vulnerable more vulnerable. Who And this is just a bizarre aside, but who's the most famous Londoners? If you had to tell me the five most famous Londoners you know of, people who've lived or were born in the city, who do you think the most famous
Alive
Londoners
or
are?
dead?
Well, whatever, I suppose. Like, globally recognized as somebody from London. I couldn't think of anyone off the top of my head when I was thinking
Well,
about it.
like, like people in like classic literature, like Samuel Pepys or Charles Dickens, maybe. Um,
And is he even from London?
well, I don't
Like,
know. I don't know if either of them were born in London or whether they. I know they lived in London, obviously, but um,
I
I
mean,
don't
what about
know.
someone like Lily Allen? And is she
Yeah, but
even
there
from
must be
London?
more. There must be more famous Londoners than that, surely. Like, what about? Hang on, I'm doing some live research.
Okay, let's have a
Um,
look. I mean, was the Queen Elizabeth II, was she born in London?
um, I, I probably. I don't know.
David Beckham? Is he from the like
N
East End or something?
is
Or
he? Maybe. I don't know. There
David
must be
Bowie?
loads. What about Barbara Windsor? David Bowie. Yeah,
David Bowie.
he's a
Um,
famous Londoner. What about Elton John? Or Freddie Mercury?
yeah,
Um,
Elton John, Idris Elba, but he's a bit more modern, isn't he?
yeah.
Do you know who I was
Well,
thinking of, but I'm
yeah.
not even sure where he was born? Oh yeah, Charlie Chaplin
Oh
was
yeah, yeah. He
born
was
in
like
London.
Brixton, Camberwell area, wasn't he?
He was sent to a
Sharon
workhouse.
Sharon Osbourne.
Is she from London?
Yeah. Sharon.
Stephen Fry, Beatrix Potter.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
What
yeah, I
about
was just
Ian McKellen? I don't know if he's originally from London or
he
not.
sounds like he's from like the home counties or something. He sounds a bit
Possibly.
posh. But
Yeah.
I really, the other day when I was sat down reading about London and I read about the population dive and then it growing again, I was like, oh, that's funny. Who are famous Londoners? And I couldn't think of somebody that, like a lot of people, when I lived overseas, before I came to the UK, when I thought of famous English people or people from the UK, they were
Mm.
often from other cities like Pete Burns from Liverpool or Morrissey from
Yeah.
Manchester. I
Yeah.
couldn't really think of specifically, or like the Beatles, or I couldn't think of Londoners as people
Mm.
from the. I don't know. That's weird, isn't it? But I suppose a lot of people come to London.
Mm.
They're not from London.
Yeah. Um,
Uh,
s- Speaking of cities,
yes.
I wanted to sort of pick your brain or hear your thoughts about something. So, when we think about cities and where we're from and identity and stuff like that, I was thinking a lot about nationalism. There's been a lot of discussion
Mm.
in the news this week about the Union Jack flag, and how much that's been
Or the
used or
St
weaponized.
George's flag.
George's flag as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I have been thinking a lot about nationalism, and I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. I think the podcast, "The Guilty Feminist" with Deborah Francis White,
Hmm.
and I was listening to her the other day, and something she said, it really got me thinking about how I really don't like to talk in terms of the left and the right, because I think that's just a really sort of defunct
Yeah, it's
and
very reductive.
reductive
Yeah.
binary to use. But for lack of a better term, like liberal or conservative or whatever, she was saying we have to use the tools that the right are using,
Yeah.
because if we are just apathetic and don't embrace those things, then they're going to win. They're going to win people's hearts and minds, because people are gullible and people are
Well,
susceptible.
do you remember me telling you that's also what
Oh yeah, that Pulaski.
Zach Balansky was talking
Yeah,
about? So I've been listening to
Christine Baranski.
Christine Baranski. I've been listening to a podcast by is it Mark Steele? Is that his name? Is a comedian or a
Oh yeah.
commentator? And it's called "What the Fuck Is Going On?"
All
And
right.
so he has different guests. It's very interesting. I think you'd enjoy it. And Zach Polanski was a guest across 2 episodes. He normally does the chats in 2 parts,
Okay.
and they talk a lot about politics, but it's from a very middle class sounding bloke point of view, which I find interesting, especially when those sorts of men are often talking from a more progressive or left
Mm.
wing
Mhm.
viewpoint, because often the male voices of that age demographic in the UK are more conservative or right wing.
Mhm.
So it's nice to have these voices speaking up for like trans people standing up against racism or
Hmm.
genocide.
Hmm.
So anyway, you should listen to that podcast. But
What the
that's
fuck is going
exactly,
on?
yeah, and that's
Okay.
exactly what Zach Balansky was talking about in one of his episodes, where he
Yeah.
was saying we need to use the these populist tools
But
and ways
but
of appealing to people.
But thinking about nationalism, I mean, I've never really felt proud to be British. I've never really felt that proud, of any particular aspect of my identity. I've never really felt that ashamed either, I suppose.
Mhm.
But, well, I mean, that's not true. I think there are elements, but maybe that's not for here, not for now. But in terms of sort of my British identity or my European identity, I don't think I've ever felt particularly proud, but a lot of people do. I was,
But what's the historical context for that? Like, where does national identity in this country come from? I mean,
well,
you
yeah,
know,
that's
it's often
that's
tied to the idea of empire, isn't it?
hmm empire and
And
also war as well. Like winning a
yeah,
war is
and
is. Hmm.
like nostalgia. So
Hmm.
nostalgia, empire, war, and the decline of those ideas, or whether they're
Yeah,
real or imagined,
yeah,
those
and
memories of before most of people alive were even born. There's
mhm.
ideas of what it meant to be British.
Yeah, these
But
the past, the glorification of the past and
but
the
what
wane.
obviously, like, we know the difference between having pride in where you're from and what your shared experience is, and nationalism. But I
Hmm.
suppose for the sake of the podcast, we could explain it really briefly and succinctly as, national pride or societal pride
Yeah.
is feeling proud and happy with shared experience or achievements with
Hmm.
people that are around you or experience the same thing as you. Whereas nationalism tips over into something uglier
Mm.
that is about at the exclusion of other people. So feeling those things at the exclusion of other people and
Yeah.
often using it to cause harm in that way. Do you know, I'm reading a book at the moment. Do you know Dan Cruikshank? He's like a
Oh,
historian,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm reading this book about Soho, the history of Soho,
All right.
and it's because I lived in Soho, and it's interesting to me. Is some of it is very much just like at this number street, this is what happened in this building. At this number
Mhm.
street, this is what happened. But I find it really fascinating. But what's interesting and very revealing about a book about this sort of history is it just shows you how the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Mhm.
Nationalism back then was the same thing, and
When you say
it
back
you
then, what era are you talking about?
well, I mean, this book goes way back to, like, the 1600s,
Oh, right,
1500s,
okay.
1600s, 1700s, but, they would, what are their names? The Huguenots, the French people that came.
Huguenots, yeah,
Is it
yeah.
pronounced Huguenots? That's a
Mm.
one word I've never heard said out loud.
No.
Um, Huguenots were French, and when they came over, there was like a lot of suspicion, and they're coming over here and they're destroying our culture. But then after a while, the the skills or the values that they brought with them were absorbed
Sounds very
into
familiar,
society,
Sue. Mhm.
and now it's considered part of British culture. Some of
Mhm.
the historical elements of the Huguenots, and then also the people that were living in the rich houses, or the people that were benefiting from the perpetuation of nationalism or empire pride, were the
Mhm.
rich people, and the poor people in the workhouses were the ones who were told to resist newcomers, even though they got
Mhm.
nothing out of it. And it's
Yeah.
exactly what was happening hundreds of years ago
Yeah.
is happening now.
Yeah.
So you've got like what's happened with Brexit, and what Reform Party are trying to do is to try and scare people and use fear, and to
Mhm.
use national pride and turn it into something ugly, and
Yeah.
use it to hurt people
But
who are different.
here's the question I have for you though. So, you and I are not nationalists. We don't believe in national pride as a concept really, but a lot of people do. And so it's all very well for us, for lack of a better term, liberally minded people,
Mhm.
or left leaning people. It's all very well for us to just be like, no, I'm not proud to be British and or Australian or whatever. Um, but we can sit there in and stroke our beards and be satisfied with our our stance on that, but that doesn't appeal to a lot of people. And so is it acceptable for left-leaning political figures or parties to embrace that nationalist ideology in order to win votes, in the same way that you and I have talked on the podcast before about how People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, employed mainstream sexist frameworks and, well, all sorts of problematic frameworks, sexist, racist,
Yeah.
homophobic frameworks, in order to try and get their message across.
But
Or
I think this is where you have to draw the distinction. You don't use racist or divisive tactics. You
mm,
use tactics that give people pride, but not at the exclusion or harm of other people. That's
mhm,
the difference. So you
mhm.
can run I don't know,
Like St George's Day something or other street
well,
party.
yeah, I suppose if that's your thing, you could do that. But as long as it recognizes and celebrates everybody who is a part of that.
Mhm,
Like modern day Britain is not that imagined version of what it used to be. And it
mhm,
never was. That's
mhm.
a fallacy from the history books that were written by storytellers. It was
Yeah.
never like that. And the movement of people has never ceased here on this island. Like there are people
Mm,
coming, going. I mean, it spoke French. It was Roman for a while. It was probably Norse for, Viking for a while.
mhm,
And this, we're not going back that far. Like this isn't the way that when you think of like Carry On films or Are You Being Served or, The War and Winston Churchill, you're not that's not the way it always was. And it
no.
was only like those sorts of snippets of things people are referencing were for minuscule amounts of time.
Mhm,
And to say that you want to exclude people because they don't fit that narrative, well, A, it's just idiotic because that narrative is false and was
mhm,
creative. Much
mhm,
like what happened in Australia and happens in Australia with all the jingoism around the Anzacs and being like a good Australian.
mhm.
And also, what's another thing that's confusing to me is people seem to get it mixed up. British nationalism doesn't really exist. What they mean is English nationalism,
Yeah.
because people in Scotland and Wales don't really want a lot to do with England a lot of the time, or they feel that they've been subjugated and
They have their own national identity. I mean, obviously we're speaking in very broad terms here. But yeah, they have their own national identity, and so this idea of British nationalism is doesn't yeah, you're right. That's not
yeah,
really a thing. No
yeah,
one's proud particularly. I think even in the right, in the most extreme, I don't think anyone's particularly proud to be British. They're proud
yeah,
to be English, most likely.
yeah.
But
And
yeah,
so, what goes on in Scotland or Wales is a lot more of this cultural pride and celebration
do you
that
think
doesn't exclude other people.
do you think that's maybe why, when you go to other countries and the national flag is flown and displayed quite widely. I mean, some
Hmm.
countries more than others. I mean, America being the most obvious example, but even Mexico, you think about that huge flag ceremony they have in the Zocalo every day, in the morning and in the
Hmm.
evening, and it's just not the same here. Do you think maybe that's because our flag is an amalgamation of different flags to make up, the United Kingdom? Do you think maybe that's why it's just not? I mean, no one really displays the flag here, and if you do, you pretty much are assumed to be racist, you know?
Well, I
And
think it depends on what flag it is. Like if you saw the Union Jack outside, you'd see the Union Jack outside Harrods or outside,
yeah,
you see it, but you don't see the
yeah,
St. George's Cross usually, unless it's somebody who you could make a bet and pretty much be on the money that they had certain political
political leanings,
leanings,
yeah, yeah,
right? Like that's how it goes. Or
mm,
it was somehow related to maybe the football English team, English
Right.
football
Yeah.
team. I
Yeah.
mean, sorry, it could be that. So, like when the women's English football team just won the World Cup, yeah, you
Mm.
saw a lot of those flags there.
Hmm.
Now that is an example of celebrating national pride without excluding other people. So
Mm.
if that is people coming together for a shared experience,
Hmm.
it still feels a little bit distasteful to me because of my insights or my feelings around nationalism.
Yeah.
But it does if that celebration is inclusive of everybody,
Hmm.
I don't see a lot of harm in that. But when it is also tied in with the exclusion or harm of people who aren't white
Mm.
British or white English, that's where the problem. And the issue is that it so easily tips over into that,
Yeah.
or it gets those feelings of pride around shared experience or shared joy get exploited by politicians and
Mm.
businesses that have nefarious motivations, and they want to use
Hmm.
it as a coercing tool or a controlling tool to help control the population and the working class people to do what they want.
Mm. Yeah. And so I don't know. Is it therefore a strategic move to maybe embrace it a bit more on the left so that it's not used as a tool, or it dilutes the power of the right who use that nationalism as a tool to exclude others and to further their own political beliefs? You know,
Yeah, well,
it's a really
that's why,
hard sort
but
of conundrum to contemplate, isn't it? Like,
that's
obviously I'm never
why,
going to wear a St George's Cross t-shirt or hang a St George's Cross flag, but I don't know. Is it? I
but
was
that's
trying to
why.
go on.
You want to take a breath, Sue? That's why, um, celebrations of community pride, spirit, and shared experience are important, and they do matter, and they should exist, and there should be space for them. But they should be interwoven with celebrations such as multicultural days, uh, like other grassroots movements like rock against racism or music against racism. There should be not, understandings that there are, Pakistani um, English, people living in Britain, that there
Hmm.
are people from Australia
Yeah,
living
that
here. There are people from
English doesn't mean
no
British
English
born
doesn't.
white people. Yeah.
No. And so that is national pride and celebration done correctly
Hmm.
and not to the exclusion or harm of other people.
Mm.
But when you get people saying, oh, well, we don't want um, like a mosque in our town,
Hmm.
or we don't want a temple in our town, or we don't want, um, I mean, even queer pride or whatever feels like doesn't fit the narrow narrative of what British nationalism means, that's
Mm.
when it becomes dangerous. So you can use populism, is that the right word? Populism? You can use that to help garner a movement, like to help push a movement forward, but as long as it's inclusive and progressive and compassionate. But as soon as it starts, like reform starts to say, well, not these people, not all these people who don't fit our narrative, including queer people, trans people, uh, refugees, people who weren't born here, people of this of religion, that is when that needs to be challenged. So there is a way to do it. Like I think people like Zach Polanski are trying to find a way to do it, but it's tough because it's just so much of it is about exploiting those emotions and turning it into fear.
Mm. And I don't see that much from the Labour Party, you know. And I mean, we've talked
Oh, they're
a
fucking
lot on
hopeless.
here about how fucking hopeless they are, but I don't know. I dread the next election in this country because I don't. Honestly, it's like an existential crisis. What the fuck am I going to do? Because if I don't vote for Labour, I'm giving my vote to Reform, probably. You know, that's how sad our political situation is here, or our political system, how unrepresentative it is, and how unfair it is. If I don't vote for Labour, I'm giving vote to reform. It's awful. I mean, this all could change by the time we get to the next election. It's a few years away, but in local elections, even, I
Yeah.
really struggle to know what's the best thing to do. Do I put my personal beliefs aside and just vote for the greater good? It's a very unfair system we have, but
Well, do you know there's this new party started by Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana called
yeah,
Your Party,
yeah,
and it's meant to be an alternative to um, Labor, right?
hmm
Well, I
hmm
don't even see it as an alternative to Labor anymore because Labor are so far from
they're
what I
so
see as my
they're so
values.
centrist now. They're like,
But not
yeah,
even. I think they're fucking right wing. Like, I
well,
think
yeah.
that, you know,
But this is
it,
this they'd probably they probably have had strategic meetings and had similar discussions to this where they say we have to go to the
yep,
right, we have to go to
yes.
the right, and it's and and so part of me understands it as a strategic move, but a much larger part of me absolutely fucking despises it.
Yeah,
And
but
so what do
that's
you
the
do?
thing.
What are you left with?
You don't have to going to the ideas of populism or nationalism don't have to equate to excluding or diminishing certain elements of the community. It
Mm,
doesn't have to be that. You can champion your party on the platform of pride in the shared experience of being British,
mm,
but that you show people what that means in a much more progressive and broader sense, not a
mm,
narrow and harmful and fearful sense. And that's what needs to happen. But Labor are going down this path of, oh, yeah, we're going to send people back to where they came from. We're going to sell off the NHS. And yes, we're going to take disability benefits away from people who are scroungers. And we're going to, it's all of the same rhetoric. Like if a Labor politician got up and told you their platform, but they didn't tell you what party they were from, you wouldn't know if they were fucking Tories or Labor.
yeah,
It's all
yeah,
the same. And the way that they're treating trans people in
yeah,
this country, you wouldn't
yeah.
know the difference between and
It,
the only way you'd know someone was reform is because they would probably not be as eloquent about the way they're saying the same fucking racist things.
maybe, although that's not a given. But the other interesting thing that Deborah Francis White was talking about on this podcast I was listening to was about the anti-trans sentiment that has been stirred up or whipped up by the media and by politicians in this country.
Yeah,
And she was saying that it all came from when the UK passed same sex marriage legislation, and then France did shortly after that. Apparently, there was a meeting here in London. There was a meeting from the Christian right from all over the world. They came and had a sort of secretive meeting in London, and they said they were extremely concerned about non-Christian values being accepted by the mainstream and being sworn into law. And so they sat down, and according to Deborah, there is evidence now that is available to support this. But apparently, they had secretive meetings, secretive forum here in London, and they decided that the only way to counter that was to go after trans people because they were seen as the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest
yeah,
people or the easiest demographic to target. And so it was a concerted effort by the conservative right, or the Christian right, I mean, um, who started putting these news stories out there, who started all this false rhetoric about, oh, trans women in bathrooms are a threat to cis women and stuff like that. Um, there is just no, it's a made up threat, it's a made up target, and it's being
yeah,
weaponized and used by the Christian right. And it makes me think about nationalism and how that's been weaponized when really especially when harking back to the MAGA movement and this idea of making something great again, or going back to a past glory. There is no past glory. The past glory
mhm,
was, like you were saying, it's a false narrative. It was never that
yeah.
great. And
Well, the past glory is colonialization.
Right.
Past glory is slavery.
Yeah.
Past glory is robbing communities from all over the planet,
Well,
like
yeah, like
enslaving most of Africa.
exploiting people. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so we.
exploiting natural resources like mining. I mean, even like, where we lived for a little while or had a place in Mount Morgan,
Mhm, mhm.
the mountain wasn't there anymore because it was minerals were extracted and the entire mountain was destroyed. It
Yeah.
doesn't exist anymore.
So yeah, just
This
in
mountain
central
from like
Queensland.
200 years. Yeah.
Yeah, in central Queensland, just outside Rockhampton, in Australia, there's a small town called Mount Morgan, and the mountain is no longer there because, well, I can't remember what they were called, but they went on to become the oil company BP, British Petroleum.
Yeah. So
They
the
mined,
money made from that destroying that natural habitat
yeah,
was then used to go and create
to
BP.
then go and exploit other places in the world in the Middle East for their oil supplies.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
and like
but
and
but
and and, and like the history of empire or the national belief. I mean, it's like things like reading about workhouses and
mm,
what's great about that? Like every period of British history as like a colonial power is disgraceful and was about controlling, destroying, and scaring people, stealing from
mm.
people, hurting people. What's great about that? What fucking moron wants to relive that or hold that up as some sort of ideal?
But so then that doesn't that beg the question about what can we be proud about if we're gonna if and I'm not saying you and me especially, but just say, hypothetically, if we were to embrace this sort of like nationalism in order to kind of counter the nationalist propaganda from the right, what what is there to be proud about? We don't
Well,
have.
kindness and compassion. So things like, I work for Made in Hackney, and we look after people. So
Mhm.
we about social justice and redressing inequality and inequity and
Mm.
that. But
But that doesn't
you know,
sell. Do you know what I mean? Sadly, that doesn't sell. When people talk about, making America great again, they're talking about a period in history where America was so rich in resources and in labor because it had slavery. It had, it was
but
exploiting
only a
people.
that's another thing. Only a small chunk all through the USA's history, only a
Mm.
small percentage of the population benefited from that even. So you
Mm.
had people through Appalachia and everything who have been fucking dirt poor for generations. You've,
Yeah.
you know, you this is not like this isn't even just a slavery thing. This is like there have been a small percentage of people in places like the UK and the USA and
Mm.
Australia who have sat at the top, skimming the cream off the top,
Mm.
while minorities, but then also a large poor majority of people were
Yeah.
also subjugated and
That's
used as a tool.
That's true, but I would just say, I suppose that, and this is, I'm not saying I'm completely on board with this because it's often a response used by the right when they talk about, for example, like the British colonization of India. They'll say something like, "Oh, but they brought India into the modern world. They built railways and stuff like that." But I suppose there is a grain of truth in that, maybe, in the sense that although it was a very small percentage of people at the top who were enjoying the benefits, when let's take Britain as an example, when Britain was, ruled the waves or whatever, if you want to invoke that ridiculous song, um, rule Britannia. When
Mm,
we were exploiting people all over the world and the British Empire was at its peak,
yeah,
even poor people in this country were reaping benefits of that in terms of, you think about infrastructure, transport infrastructure that was built around that time, even public buildings. I mean, you look around at public buildings that were built in the 1800s and in the
yeah.
early 20th century. These are grand, like incredibly grand building projects, and everyone benefited from that in
Well,
some
not
way.
everybody. So,
Well,
you know,
no, I
like we're
think they
talking
did. I
about
think they did because
what
I think that.
if you look at this book, the
Mm,
majority of people who lived in London during these
mm,
times were living in poverty or near poverty conditions. There were
mm,
rich people who had property handed down to them or the king bestowed it upon them or some bullshit, and
mm,
they had like a massive townhouse in Soho or Soho Square that was
mm,
the size of a city block, and one family lived in it. And
mm,
so you had in the East End, in the more sort of slum areas, where you
mm,
would have tenement blocks where people who were poor would live like multiple families in an apartment or 8 people in a room,
mm,
lice ridden. And this is at the same time where they were telling these people, hey, you serve the queen or you serve the
mm,
king.
mhm,
And or a little bit after that, they would be sending all of these poor people to fight in wars on
mm,
behalf of the empire or whatever other bullshit they came out with, like democracy or whatever.
mm.
You know, like, I mean, British
But
rule
yeah,
in,
but at the
well,
same time, but I think yeah, that's true. But at the same time, they were building, one of the what was then one of the most cutting edge, public transport systems in the world. They were building
for
roads.
whose
They were
benefit?
well, I mean, for not necessarily, I wouldn't say the benefit, but it was used by the people here, and it was on the back of exploitation of people in other countries.
Yeah, but
Subjects of the royal.
those things, even the people who benefited here, it was a
Mm.
device to make them good workers in the capitalist cog machine, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, true,
they want
true.
you to be able to get to work. They don't want you to go from fucking like South Ealing to Wood Green for a laugh. They want you
Yeah.
to go there so you can do minimum wage jobs or like fucking poor wages to
Mm.
keep rich people rich. Those trains don't exist for our
But
pleasure.
but but I think that there's, if you walk around the streets of London, there are so many echoes of times gone by where there seemed to be more money coming into the country because we had overseas uh, um, colonies, and because
Yes.
perhaps let's say the church, for example, was exploiting people all over the world as
Yeah.
well, that
Yeah.
we were building huge cathedrals, we were building massive bridges, we were building public transport, we were building
Mhm.
sewer waste water systems and stuff like that. We were building so much infrastructure that people accessed, and I don't know what we're doing now, because and we're not, we don't seem to be exploiting people in the same way. Now we seem to be exploiting our own people more, and
Well,
that's
no,
leading to
we
more
do it.
dissatisfaction.
We do it, but it's in different ways because of modernity. So we
Mm,
exploit people for technological reasons.
mm,
So, for instance, everything from like call centers in India and to production of electronics in China, to
mm,
mining of rare minerals for those things in Africa, it's
mm,
changed. The way that we exploit and
mm,
redirect resources and I mean human resources as well as natural resources
mm.
from these countries has changed because of modernity. So
But
we might not have railways and chimneys anymore, but we have got iPhones and call centers
so it's all
and
very
other.
individual now. It's all about individual gain rather than something, that is more sort of community focused, perhaps. I
Well,
don't
no,
know.
it's still similar in that they're false gains, that they're tricks to keep you complacent. So you think you've got a phone and you can watch TikTok all day.
Mm,
You don't, because that's just one phone in your hand. You don't think you're complicit in the exploitation of other people around the planet to give you that, but
mm,
you are. We all are collectively. But it simultaneously benefits our society to have these technological advances, but it also controls us to keep us as making money for the richest people. And that's getting more pronounced. So the rich people are becoming richer and more poor people are getting poorer. And that's like a global reality.
mhm,
And um, just the way that populations are exploited has changed over these last few hundred years. It's still happening, but it's just changed how it happens. And so we think we're more civilized, like, oh, we don't believe in slavery. Slavery happens to bring this podcast to the world. You know,
Mm.
there are
Hmm.
child
There are
laborers.
components in like this microphone in
Yeah,
this laptop or whatever
yes,
that exist in my possession in my room
yeah,
here because of children being
yeah.
exploited. Probably, yeah, yeah.
So it just becomes more palatable to us because they're things that bring us so much joy or comfort or convenience. Same with
Mm.
sweatshop clothing. Same with the food that is produced for you. Everything you want to shop open 24 hours a day. That comes at a cost. Every convenience you have in your life, somebody is suffering so you can have that.
Yeah, and I feel like we've gone too far down a certain route now in civilization that I don't think we could ever go back to a place where that doesn't exist, where that exploitation doesn't exist. I don't think it's possible to exist anywhere without exploiting directly or indirectly exploiting other people. It just doesn't seem possible. And that's not to say we shouldn't make efforts not to do it, but
But also,
it.
like the things that we're talking about, what happened in India and Africa and many other places around the world,
Mm,
like the transfer and extraction of wealth, that
mm,
will never, ever, ever go back there unless massive reparations that were scaled up for interest
mm,
was to be sent back.
mm,
Um, they caused extreme intergenerational poverty. It,
mm,
there are famines because of what imperial powers like Britain have done, and
mm-hmm,
France,
mm-hmm.
Spain. So, famines,
Yeah, Ireland, yep.
like disappearing. Well, the famine in India, I mean, killed hundreds of millions of people, I think, right? Like it
Mm,
wasn't just like, I mean, we are distressed about the famine that is happening in Gaza, and so we should be.
mm,
But we also shows how quickly we forget
yeah.
that the world we live in here as Londoners was built off the literal backs of starving people in India
Mm,
who all of that wealth and all of that security was stolen from those people to
mm,
build this empire and to build the railways that we're talking about. That's not that long ago. We're not talking about 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago
mm,
or 500 years ago. We're talking, well, like, look what's happened in Australia. Like, I went to the Tate the other day with Hill to see uh, an Indigenous artist, an Aboriginal woman from Australia. And seeing her art, she didn't start painting. She was part of the stolen generation. She didn't start painting until Emily Yam Ngawari, I think you pronounce her name. And I really apologize for not pronouncing that correctly. I know I didn't. But if you look up the Tate, you'll see her name.
It'll take
But
modern,
she didn't
right?
Tate Modern. She didn't start painting until she was 70. She was part of the stolen generation, and she painted until she died when she was 92.
Mm-hmm,
It was so emotionally draining, and I'm not trying to be the victim here, but I felt so culpable of going into that space and seeing the art from this person as a white Australian,
mm,
going in there and reading the story and seeing her ancestors talk about why she painted. She learned to paint so she could carry on the story and the dreaming and everything and pass it down to people because it was all stolen, and the
mm,
land and the resources, and not only the land and the resources, people's lives and their realities were stolen from them. It's
yeah,
so fucking distressing. And
mm,
this is in my lifetime that
yeah,
these things were happening and
yeah. This
still
is
to a
less
degree
than
are
a hundred
happening in Australia.
years of history. Yeah, yeah.
And so we can talk about India, we can talk about Australia, we can talk about Africa and like Sudan and Gaza, all of these fucked up things that are to benefit us. And then people want to talk about being proud of a
Mm.
certain, pick any slice of history out of any of the time we've just talked about and tell me
Mm.
what the fuck
So
you've got
how
to
do
be
we?
proud about.
So not you and I necessarily, but how does society create a new national pride that is inclusive, that is progressive? Like what if you think about symbols of pride, you look around and take buildings, for example, take public buildings
Mm.
or something, I don't know if that's the right category, but, you look at something like the Houses of Parliament, you look at something like Westminster Abbey, or you look at, I'm just trying to think, there aren't that many good examples perhaps in the UK. There are some like older engineering things, like all the things that Brunel designed, like well, what's the bridge in Bristol called? I'm blanking on the name.
Yeah, I don't know.
Um, uh, the Clifton Suspension Bridge
Yeah,
and
okay.
things like that. All of those were built through exploitation. Or
Yeah,
you look further afield. You look at like the pyramids in Egypt. They were built by
yeah,
slaves. And
yes.
so I'm not advocating for that, obviously, but where are our symbols of national pride now? It can't surely be like capitalist buildings like the Shard or,
Well, maybe we
places,
need to reframe it, that we don't need national pride, but we need societal or communal pride.
community
So
pride.
things
Mm,
Yeah, community pride. So it doesn't have to be national pride. It can be community pride. And it's built from things that don't exploit to the best of our abilities, doesn't exploit people who are vulnerable or have less than us or are different from the
mm,
majority of people in a space. And that
mm.
it should be about but like a
Yeah,
football
it
team could
should
be a
be.
good
It should
example of that,
be.
right?
It should be. But it's, people are people. And, we know that people often want a very quick, easy visual representation of something. And so I worry,
That's it. It takes community activists. It takes elected leaders who are more progressive and thoughtful and compassionate to lead by example.
mm,
That's what it needs because as much as we think all politicians are jokers, they do. Prominent people do help shape public opinion and public sentiment. And so when you get Gaga standing up on stage and talking about trans rights, that affects people. It makes,
mm.
even if it doesn't change one person's mind, it makes trans people feel less alone,
Even if she is selling
right?
a Gaga cap for 54.99.
hmm Right? Or, people like inclusion, multiculturalism, celebration, community pride, those things can all happen as long as they aren't used as tools to exclude people or
My
to
f-
harm people.
yeah, my worry is that yes, they are all great things, but are they enough to counter the oversimplistic messages that the right push out into the world? And I
Well,
worry
fine.
that they're not.
There's nothing simpler than saying be kind to people. There's
No, there's
nothing
not, but
simpler.
it doesn't win votes. That's the problem.
Well, it
And
could. It
well,
could if it's messaged the right way.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Well, a lot to think about. I mean, people can tell us their thoughts in the comments or just email us. You can email us anytime. Tell me where I'm going wrong, podcast@gmail.com. A bit of a mouthful, admittedly. But you can just also contact me and Sean directly on social media and tell us what you think.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would really like to know what people think a
mm,
healthier sense of communal identity could look like. Like, what would that
yeah,
look like? And it doesn't even have to be the UK. If you're listening to this in Australia or anywhere else around the world, and you think you have some ideas of what a healthier idea of collective identity could look like,
mm,
it would be really wonderful to hear your
mm,
ideas.
yeah. Well, speaking of community pride, just a reminder. I think this podcast will be broadcast after the fact, but Sean and I are celebrating this weekend in London the third anniversary of the Queer Open Mic, but it's on every
It
month.
will have
So
happened. Yeah, it will have
yeah,
happened. But yeah, come
so
along and be proud with us.
even though if you're listening to this and you weren't there, you will have missed our third anniversary. It does happen on the last Sunday of every month at the Cock Tavern in Kennington, which is a part of Vauxhall. Which I'm not sure which London borough is Kennington in. Is that Lambeth?
Might be Lambeth, I'm not sure.
Yeah, not the Royal
Um,
Borough of Lambeth, just plain old Lambeth.
is
And
it is it Lambeth or Southwark?
I think it's Lambeth.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, come and join us another time, and you can find all the details in either my social media or Sean's social media. If you want to follow me, you can do. I'm Josh and the Jumpstarts on Instagram, and you can listen to my music and stream my music. And same name, Josh and the Jumpstarts, on all streaming channels. What about you, Sean? Where can people find more about you?
People can go to my blog, which is fatkvegan.com, or follow me on Instagram at fatkvegan. And I wrote about events, and I review mostly vegan businesses. I have rants. I've got a rant up there recently where I talked about the cost of train tickets in the UK and how it's stopping community cohesion because
Is it
people are
affecting our
unable
national?
to.
It's affecting our national pride, I think.
It really is, because it's stopping people from being able to have shared experiences across area borders, and it's creating people who are locked into these small spaces. So yes, it really is, and
Yeah.
that disproportionately is affecting people who are poorer as well.
Yeah.
So
and yet
anyway,
the politicians are telling them it's immigrants that are the problem. Anyway,
yes,
that's not for here. That's another podcast, perhaps. So fatgayvegan.com and fatgayvegan on social media channels.
and
Great.
if you have anything interesting to tell me about vampires, please let me know.
Yeah.
I would love to hear what you've got to say about
Do you have a
vampires,
name for your
especially any
vampire head?
recommendations. Well, no, I
Do you
suppose
give
it's
it a
just
name?
Dracula, right?
I suppose.
I mean,
I don't know.
what would you call it?
I don't know.
And
Just
also, why is it
vamp
blue? Why is
vampy.
it blue?
Don't know. Interesting.
I suppose 'cause he's dead, cold.
Well,
But
yeah, let's that's enough vampire head figurine talk. We'll just sign off and say please subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, and we will be back here next week, but please be kind to each other.
and I would just finish by saying, if you do feel the need to feel proud about something, don't let anybody weaponize it. Just feel proud, feel celebrated, but don't let people get you to use it against anybody else. It's your business to feel proud.
Good call. Okay, and the US state that can be typed on one line of the QWERTY keyboard is...
What's
Any
it start with?
guesses? Any guesses? Starts with A?
Well, what's it? Iowa.
No. Starts with A.
Oh no, that's what?
Alaska.
What?
Alaska.
Um.
Yeah. All right, folks. See you next week.
Okay. Bye.